Hi there, I'm Janan Jera,
And I'm Peter Poon.
and we are two of the lawyers at eLaw Alliance. And today we wanted to talk to you about the topic of child support. We're going to be answering between the two of us some general questions about the topic. We're not providing legal advice in this video. If you are looking for legal advice, you'll have to give us a call directly. But in the meantime, let's answer some general questions about child support.
That's correct. Janan, I guess the first question, the basic one, is what is child support?
Good question. Child support, first and foremost, is the right of the child, and it is a payment made by the parent who does not have the children more than 40% of the time. They pay the parent who does have the child more than 40% of the time an amount for child support, usually every month. Child support can be classified into three categories. For example, Section 3 expenses are things that cover basic food, clothing, shelter, basic necessities. It's calculated by taking the payor parent's income, usually line 150 of a notice of assessment, or in some cases, if you're self-employed, they have to figure out your income that way. That amount is plugged into the online child support calculator, and then you get a Section 3 amount that's used to cover basic necessities. There's also Section 7 expenses, which both parents contribute towards according to their proportionate incomes. It is a shared expense, and it covers things like extracurricular activities or extra expenses like daycare, soccer, baseball, things of that nature. And we also have set-off child support, or Section 9, and what that amount indicates is in cases where there's shared parenting, where a parent is literally sharing about 50% of the time with the children, 1 week with dad, let's say, 1 week with mom. In that scenario, both parents will be required to pay child support according to a calculation where the higher earner calculation of child support is set, and then the lower earner, whatever the set off between those two incomes are, is the set off amount, and the parent who earns more will be the parent that'll pay that reduced set off amount for child support.
We get this question a lot. If I don't see my kids, or my ex don't let me see my kids, does that mean I don't have to pay any child support?
No, you do have to pay child support even if you're not permitted to see your kids, or you don't get very much time with your kids. You're still obligated to pay child support.
Let's see. What if my ex makes a lot more money than I do, and they have the children on a day-to-day basis? Does that mean I don't have to pay any child support?
No, you will still be required to pay child support even if the other parent can take care of the kids independent of you and be able to meet all their needs. That's not what directs whether or not you pay child support. It is a right of the child, and if you make a certain amount of income, you will be required by law to pay child support no matter where the children are residing.
What if my kid is older now, he's an adult, he's over 18, do I still have to pay child support?
It's a possibility. Under the Divorce Act and under the Family Law Act, there are provisions related to child support having to be paid to children that are over the age of 18. In most circumstances where you have to pay child support when the child is over the age of 18, it is in regards to if the child is still in post-secondary education, if they're still economically reliant on the parents. Those are scenarios where you might have to pay child support even past the age of 18.
I received this document from my ex saying on the top says notice to disclose or request for financial document. What does that mean?
So part of the process of child support, especially once it gets through the court system, is you are obligated to exchange financial information with each other, usually on a yearly or semi-annual basis. The reason for this type of disclosure is so that the courts and the parties can figure out the most accurate number to be paid for child support. So it's a requirement. Don't refuse to provide your financial information. It'll just be a bigger headache for you if you don't provide it. In a circumstance where you refuse to provide it, the judge can order costs against you and make the ordeal worse than it has to be.
What if I don't want to provide it, they don't know what I do, and they wouldn't know what my income is then I don't have to pay child support, is that right?
No, that's not right. You can't trick the courts. They've seen it all before, so don't even bother. If you think that by simply not showing your income information, nobody will be able to figure out your child support and so you don't have to pay it, you'd be wrong. In a circumstance where you refuse to provide income information, the court or the judge has the jurisdiction to impute your income. And what that means is they can set your income at whatever they think it should be, including what the other parent thinks it should be based on what that parent says. So if they overestimate your income, then you're potentially stuck with it. So rule of thumb, if you want the income used to be accurate, then provide your financial information.
What about if my ex is collecting social assistance? I mean, she's already getting money from the government for the kids. Why do I still have to pay?
You still have to pay because the government, in a lot of cases, well, in almost all cases, wants you to pay for your own kids if you can afford it. Just because the other parent is on social assistance does not absolve you of your responsibility to pay that child support. You will still be required to pay it. The money will go to the government, though, instead of the other parent in circumstances where the other parent is on social assistance.
What about extracurricular activities? I mean, do I have to agree with my ex to pay all of the extracurricular activities?
No, extracurricular activities or Section 7 expenses have to be reasonable, and reasonable is defined by whatever the parties can actually afford. If one of the parents wants you to contribute to a Section 7 expense that's way beyond your means, you could argue that's not reasonable and refuse to pay it. However, if the Section 7 expense is reasonable and it's within both of your budgets, then that is something you'll likely be required to contribute towards.
What if I just go back to my home country and leave Canada? Can I avoid paying child support?
If the country you're fleeing to avoid child support is what we call a reciprocating jurisdiction, you're out of luck. There are plenty of other countries, like the US, for example, where if you decide to skip town and go to the US to avoid child support, you'd still be caught. The US and Canada have an agreement that they will enforce each other's orders. So if you get a child support order in Canada, you can enforce it in the USA. Not every country is a reciprocating jurisdiction, but many are, and so you should, before you flee the country, check to make sure.
I hear it from my friends all the time, this MEP thing or maintenance enforcement thing coming after them, and what is that?
So the Maintenance Enforcement Program in Alberta is an agency or a company, an organization that exclusively deals with enforcing child support orders. And when someone doesn't pay up according to the court order, maintenance enforcement has the authority to do things like suspend the payer parent's driver's license. They can confiscate passports, garnish wages, seize assets. They can really make life pretty difficult. So the best thing to do in that circumstance is pay the child support according to the court order or according to the agreement. And if that child support amount is way beyond your means, then the right thing to do is to contact a lawyer and see about how you can get that child support amount reduced. The answer isn't to just ignore it and not pay it, because it'll catch up to you, and so will MEP.
If I refuse to pay child support, can my ex ask for retroactive child support? And what is retroactive child support?
Right, so retroactive child support is child support for basically back pay. If your ex asked you for child support on January 1st and you didn't provide it until June 1st of that same year, that spouse or ex-spouse technically could argue that 6 months worth of back pay is owed to him or her. So keep that in mind. When you refuse to pay, you might have to pay back all those monies for those months you didn't pay. There's usually a maximum. Courts don't generally go back longer than 3 years worth of back pay, but there are circumstances they can go back even further than that. But 3 years is about the max.
What if I was working before, but now all of a sudden I'm not? I can't afford the same amount of child support. What can I do?
The best thing to do would be to start a claim to reduce child support. As long as you can prove that you can't make ends meet and pay child support at the same time, as long as you can show that there's an undue hardship, that puts you in a position to try to convince a judge to reduce your child support amount.
I've had many other relationships and I have other kids and I've been paying child support, and now my most recent ex is asking me for child support as well. Do I have to pay for this one as well?
Yep, that's right. Your other support obligations will be taken into consideration if you're making an undue hardship claim, but it's not usually the rule that because you have too many kids, you can't afford to pay for all of them, that you don't have to pay it. If you're making children, you're expected to take care of them financially.
Can you explain to me again how are the incomes calculated for the purpose of calculating child support?
When you're an employee, it's relatively easy. The income that the courts will use to determine child support is usually line 150 of your Canada Revenue Agency Notice of Assessment for that year. If you're self-employed, income calculations can be a lot trickier, and a lot more information is required other than just line 150. Your business accounts will be requested, and you'll have to be transparent about all of the money coming in and out of your business. This will help the court and all of the parties involved figure out what the best or most accurate income would be, even in a self-employed situation.
I know my ex loves to spend on extravagant stuff. What if I don't think that she's using the child support for my kid? Do I still have to pay child support?
So the obligation on the parent receiving the child support is that they use it to cover the costs of child expenses, like basic expenses and extracurricular expenses. You don't, as the payor parent, get to dictate how the receiving parent pays or uses the child support. So in one way, you don't get to direct that. But if the other parent, the receiving parent, is coming back to court saying she doesn't have enough money, the court will ask her what she might be spending it on and try to ascertain if it's really being used for the kids.
Well, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have for today. If you guys want more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to our video, to our channel, and we'll see you next time.
See you.